Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everyone here, all the ones that are in our chambers and all those who are watching on TV. I've asked Dale Robinson to give us a prayer, thought.
Our Father in heaven, we bow our heads before Thee this evening in capacity of this city council meeting. Wish to express our gratitude to Thee for the many blessings we receive at Thy hand. Grateful for this beautiful community in which we live and for those who serve here, the volunteers and staff, and we're particularly grateful for the council and the mayor and pray for them this night that they might be guided and directed in the decisions that they have to make. We pray, Father, and are mindful of those people who comfort them at this. We're grateful for this country we live and the freedoms we might do those things to and to continue to make this a wonderful place to live. And for these things we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. I've asked Councilman Argyle to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we've got the great award that's going to be done. Come on up, introduce yourself, and tell us what you're going to do.
Okay, we will do it. Thanks for having us. So my name is Leanne Powell, and I'm the Executive Director of the Utah Recreation and Parks Association. And this is Curtis Dixon. He's the Assistant Director up in Clearfield Leisure Services. And we are here to give your Parks and Recreation Department an award. And before we do that, so URPA represents about 1,300 Parks and Recreation professionals throughout the state of Utah. So as part of the lead up to our conference every year, we take nominations for awards and we get all of our past presidents together, and they choose the winners of about 20 different awards that we do. And one of our favorite things as an association is to come and do these presentations. One of the main reasons is to be able to thank you, because we know that the people sitting in your chairs are the ones that are out advocating for our Parks and Recreation folks. And if it wasn't up to you guys, or if it wasn't for you guys, our Parks and Recreation folks wouldn't be able to do the great work that they're doing. So thank you very much for all the work that you do and for advocating for Parks and Recreation and our professionals. The other thing that I just wanted to say before I'll let Curtis actually present the award and talk a little bit about the facility that's being honored, but I'd just like to talk a little bit about your staff and the great people that you have leading your Parks and Recreation Department. So I think I've known Dale, I probably shouldn't say how long I've known Dale, it's been decades, that will probably age both of us, so we won't go there, but we have a program called Leadership Academy where we bring some young professionals all around the state to different places, and Spanish Fork is our highlight, because one of the things that I've found is that anything this department does, they do it right. And I think we all strive for excellence, but there's very definitely a culture here where if we're going to build a park, we're going to do it right, we're going to maintain it right, and your facilities are absolutely immaculate. The people running your department, they are leaders in our field. They are our go-to people. We've had several past presidents, we've had conference chairs that are part of your department, and they truly are the leaders and our go-to people in the state. So I want you to know that you're doing a great job. They keep hiring all the best people from communities, and but we're proud to be associated with Spanish Fork in your Parks and Recreation Department, and we're really pleased to be here tonight to be able to do this award. So, Curtis.
Yep, and as Leanne said, this award here is for Outstanding Facility, and this is actually probably one of the most coveted awards at our award ceremony. Mostly because it takes such a huge effort on the part of every community to put together facilities. This year we had 2 or 3 other outstanding ones as well that was competing with your sports park with some aquatic features and some rec centers And the past presidents felt that just because of the dedication that this community has put towards this project over 20 years in the making, and just the absolute size of it being over 90 acres and all the different types of sports fields, and the ability really to, this really is a crown jewel not only for Spanish Fork City, but as well as the county and really the state as a whole. There's a facility within the state that equals this as far as size and scope. So big congratulations to everybody in this room and to all your predecessors before you to have that vision and to stay for such a long time. You know, if we could have and Tyler, who manages that facility, come up here. So I don't know which one of you wants it. If you want to rock, paper, scissors over it. So again, on behalf of you, I'd like to congratulate you guys for this award. Stand all your hard work that you do, not only for your city but for the state. So, as a mayor and council for support.
Turn around, Scott. Picture for the funny picture. Nice job. Bart, you can have. Yeah. You can tell he speaks a lot.
Thank you for allowing us to
Hey,
come and present
thank you
that.
for coming down and recognizing us. You know, we know we have a great facility here and it's recognized by everybody else. And thank you for all you do.
Yeah.
That-
My pleasure. So, thanks, you guys. These guys are going to say something.
Yeah, I should say, or else we're not going to get out of here.
Oh, well, first we appreciate all the support we've had in building the sports park. I came here in 1999 when the park was barely in its infancy. Hadn't been completed. That was my job, was to start working on the park to get it completed. It's been a great opportunity to see it come to fruition. The last edition is awesome. We enjoy pickleballs, and as you know, everyone else in town does too. 16 might not have been enough. So we appreciate the support and the opportunity. Appreciate our staff. Taylor does a great job maintaining it. Brent Frost wasn't here, but Brent was instrumental in helping build the facilities. I don't know if everybody knows, but the second phase and the soccer fields were built in-house by pretty much. So it's a feather in our cap, I think. But thank you.
Thanks, Bart.
Just basically reiterate what he said. I appreciate the support you guys give and everybody, all the citizens, and I enjoy here at the park. It's fun for me, and I enjoy seeing the citizens and everybody enjoying it. So, thank you.
And I enjoy seeing you out there when I'm down there with trails. So you're doing your job. So it's awesome.
Good job, Taylor.
Hey, we're excited for that. Thank you, guys, and thank you for that award. Well deserved. And that volunteer, and that's why it was named, because the citizens are involved in that, make that happen. So went to get. I know I picked up a lot of rocks down there on that field. So, okay, let's move to public comments. Anyone from the public would like to come up and address the mayor and the council? Feel free to come on up. If not, we'll go to council comments, and we'll go to Council Member Beck.
Okay, the only thing that I have is next week is Miss Utah, and our 2018 Miss Spanish Fork Morgan Olson will be going up Monday morning to compete up there. They have events every single night, but she's ready. She's been working hard, and we are excited. We will also have our 2017 Miss Spanish Fork, Dejana Talbot, there. She has been representing Miss Greater Salt Lake, but I still think, two young, strong girls up there representing Spanish Fork will be something else. So hopefully at our next city council, we'll have some exciting news to report. That's all I have.
Right, thank you. Councilman Scobes.
Mayor, I have a quick little report.
with some pictures just to show for you, the council, and the citizens. Within our community, we've got a number of National Guards men and women serve in the Utah Army National Guard, Air Force, the other services. And oftentimes as citizens, we don't know or don't have the opportunity to know quite what they do. I had the opportunity to go to Guatemala, and it had a Spanish Fork tie, Guatemala and Guatemala City, that I'll mention as we go through these pictures briefly. But during these 2 weeks, had the chance to go and serve as an interpreter, linguist, a Spanish linguist at an orphanage. These are just some of the kids, the picture before the orphanage, and then just some of them. Granted, I am tall, but they're standing on a bench, and I still had to kind of hunker down so that they could be seen, which was really fun for them. Actually, they had all sorts of jokes about how tall I was. But you'll notice the layout of the city. This is Guatemala City as we're flying over. Cities around the world, and we've all traveled in different ways, different venues. For Chris and Dave, there are some pictures I have that I'll share with you guys later, just on development and infrastructure that are really quite unique to that part of the world. That I think we'd be appalled at the way they did it, but it works for them. Next picture. This was very interesting. This is one of the main boulevards they have there in Guatemala City. On Sundays, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., they completely shut it down for pedestrian traffic. I'm not suggesting that we shut down Main Street. We actually live in a society where we have yards and parks. They do have some parks, but it was very interesting to see that at least with the Fit City and the things that we do with our active and healthy lifestyle, there are other cities that have similar types of things. In Guatemala City, this main thoroughfare actually runs for about 8 miles through the city, and they shut it down for that period of 4 hours on Sundays. So it was really neat to see. Where we stayed with Guatemalan forces. That's their base down below. A flight, it was a 45-minute flight by Black Hawk helicopter, a 7-hour convoy from Guatemala City up in the north part of the country. Next. We were up at 4:30 in the morning, 4 and 4:30 in the morning, so we could get out to the different sites. There were one school, 2 clinics that were being built by Army engineers, and then we also translated for veterinary services, and then clinic, medical, dental, ophthalmology, and translate for the doctors as they did work. We actually were up above 8,000 feet, and so you could see the clouds and the fog that set in every morning as we came up through that, and that was the view each morning out up over. Families had come through, women with their children. Sadly, a lot of the things that they are faced with, coffee bean plantations, little farms they work on, and they're using pesticides that the United States no longer uses, generally because of carcinogens, cancer-causing materials, and then side effects of bloody nose, headaches that don't go away, nausea, things of that nature. And so many of them came in and were treated for that. While you're on this picture, just briefly, I'll hit that at the end. Go ahead, next one. This little girl, believe it or not, is 6 years old. Just to give you an idea, the nutrition plays a big part in their size. Granted, there's genetics, as the people up in the northern part are descended from the Mayan Indians, and so they are a smaller people in general. But nutrition really plays a huge part in it. My 3-year-old grandson has greater mass and is a little taller than this girl, but just cute kids. Next picture. And again, this girl on the right is 10. Her brother on the right is 8, and then the youngest one is 6. And they look much younger than that. But just wonderful opportunity to be able to translate and work with the doctors. Is that the last one? Yeah. Okay. So just for statistics on this, and then the Spanish Fork tie-in, During the 8 days of just the medical aspect of it, translating and interpreting for the doctors, dentists, eye doctors and such, 6,698 total patients had come through the Army, the doctors were able to care for. 3,924 of them were just general medicine. 811 of them were dental patients. Many of them had done both during that time. Of those 811 dental, 1,798 teeth were extracted. That's 2.2 teeth per person. And then 1,329 optometrist duties as far as glasses that were given out and eye drops, things like that, and a total of 7,700 prescriptions. Many of the prescriptions were vitamins, pain relievers such as Tylenol and ibuprofen, things that we get over the counter and take for granted. But for their system, something that they're not used to that would help relieve them quite a bit. So it was a great opportunity to be able to be of service to these people, and also great training for us as linguists and for the Army doctors and engineers that we're building and working, constructing. And so this is what members of our community do that serve in the National Guard, is they have the opportunity to be able to leave our wonderful community and carry what we have that's good here at home abroad. Now for the Spanish Fork tie-in, I did have the opportunity to go to church while I was down in Guatemala City doing some business in the embassy. And while I was there, met one couple that knew very well Dave and Susan Euler. In fact, I had lunch with that older couple in their apartment after church, and so they had just seen Dave and Susan, our previous city manager, and thought very highly of he and his wife, and so it was neat to have that connection. And then in church, a gentleman sat down next to me, asked where I was from, and said Utah, and he said, well, hey, so am I. And then said, well, what city? Spanish Fork. And he said, well, hey, so am I. And he has a house over here by the sports park, is in Guatemala for a year working in a contract. And so that one Sunday in Guatemala City, Spanish Fork was pretty well represented with two of our citizens there, and then Dave and Susan, who had just recently been there. So mayor, council, citizens, that's where I was for the past two and a half weeks. A lot of great work, and the name Spanish Fork is just kind of spreading to the four corners of the earth in some fashion or another. So that's my report, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Mendenhall.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things. Had a Rotary meeting today I'll go to this one first. Yeah, Scott, since you're there. Yesterday we had an incident up by our house there, Sierra Park. We thought it was an incident because there were 3 police vehicles. So I hopped on the bike, went to check it out. If there's one thing Brandon Gordon has taught me, Councilman Gordon.
You didn't walk?
We had to get on the bike.
Okay.
Jagger was digging it. Don't make fun of the bike either, Brandon.
Sorry.
Or the shoes. Or the short shorts, because the mayor, those are coming back, Mayor.
They are, yeah, I wore them while in high school.
This is what was going on. I saw Officer Packard and Harris. Is that Harris, Chief? That were on a couple of powered scooters there. Officer Harris wasn't stopping very quick. He was a little nervous. What was going on, it was really cool to see in our neighborhood. It's just like any neighborhood when you see some cops pull up, like, oh, what's going on? So when we went and checked it out, they were giving out some pizzas to the kids that were playing in the park and just doing what I thought was really good community police work by gaining some rapport, some friends, and Officer Harris, Packard, and Davis, right? We're doing some cool stuff. I rode around the block after that and had a couple of neighbors ask me, well, what's going on over there? I said they're giving out pizzas. They thought that was cool. And then the officers let me know that that's a private citizen in town that has just given them a bunch of coupons to go get these pizzas and take them around. So
That's awesome.
What a cool thing to see our officers out doing good work and a private citizen here in Spanish Fork help funding that work. So some really cool things. And those are the kids that are, I told them, I knew some of these kids there, and we had some cars broken into a week ago or something up there, and it was good that these kids, put a face to the name of who we call when we have problems and everything, and they're the kids out that will be able to see that stuff when it happens. So really, really good stuff and good police work, Chief. So I wanted to take those pictures and tell them that I would embarrass them in City Council. So the Rotary Club met again today, met this morning for our monthly meeting. And just a report, I don't know if I touched on this last time. Great golf tournament, by the way, Heather, that was a month ago now, right? That the Chamber and Rotary teamed up on that to, again, make a great tournament and raise money for scholarships for kids to go to college. Very cool stuff, and very good collaboration between two great organizations. The Rotary also received a district grant that helped to fund some of our Parks and Rec stuff. We've got that money set aside, and we also did some fundraising that local citizens and businesses gave some money to be able to kids that maybe are interested in playing sports in city and don't have the resources to do the sign-up fees. The Rotary Club raised a few $1,000s to help with that. We've been in touch with the principals of the districts, or excuse me, the elementary schools in the district to make sure and vet that program, and if they know of any children that are in need and can't afford the fee, to make sure and contact us so we can get them that money. Important thing to get them involved. I've said it time and time again, to get kids involved in a team sport, out with other kids, out with other adults with adults too, and the competition of sports, whether it be soccer, football, baseball, basketball, whatever. So leads me to the next Parks and Rec related item that I have. The RAP, we'll go into this later in the council meeting, but was impressed that we had our first RAP tax meeting with the committee that will decide where those funds are spent. Again, Dale will touch on that later, but thank you to all those people for being willing to volunteer. All they got was a piece of pizza for hours on end, right? And a lot of work ahead of them. So very cool stuff. We had pizza, yes. Sorry, you should have came. And we're getting donuts next time.
Thanks for inviting.
I'll say this on the record. Susan Taylor's phone went off in the meeting, and Doug Ford will not allow anybody to skate by.
Trained him well.
Yeah, without donuts. So she's bringing donuts. It'll be a great. Our Fit City program is still up and running. Kier, it looks like it's even reached into Guatemala, where they're being active and healthy. So that's cool. We have the health fair, not this Saturday, but next Saturday. This will be the third health fair that we're doing with the Active and Healthy movement, and we sure invite the whole city to come down and participate. Dale, your department is just doing awesome with this event year after year. We appreciate Angie and all her work in the background that makes this happen, makes this come to fruition. It's turning out to be a very popular and cool thing to be at. Little 2.5K. Brandon, you can even do that, I think. You can do that. You can cut that.
Borrow your bike.
Yep. Yeah, you borrow the bike. Jagger will have to be on it, though. He won't let you take it without him. Come get some swag. Come participate in a little run and spend a great day down at the park, getting more information of how you can be active and healthy with your family. Taylor was here with Bart earlier. Again, a couple of awesome people that keep those facilities just so nice, and you're going to just love the atmosphere down there at the health fair. Again, I've said it before, but it's probably been a week or maybe a week and a half since Taylor helped teach the last QPR training. So again, when we're talking about physical health with the active and healthy community, we are also focusing a large part of our time and resources and energy on mental health. You read that every day in the news, no matter where you're at. You'll see something in the news, and oftentimes it's a tragic event that talks about mental health. I was encouraged to see where we got those grant funds from. Intermountain Healthcare has come out with a new program for postpartum depression with their new moms and everything, and different innovative ways to try to take care of the mental health of new moms and the mental health of all of us overall. So again, that's question, persuade, refer. We sure appreciate Susan Chapman, Taylor Banks, Bronco, Hunter, who else? Kim Hall, and Heather Frost are teaching those constantly, whether it's in our religious organizations, it's at the city, private businesses have taken, Brandon, your business had that a few weeks ago, and it's completely free, right? They didn't make you pay anything. Came and talked to you about how to help each other be better mental health-wise and see some warning signs if you need to. So I appreciate them keeping that up. It's yielding results. We're getting healthier in our minds and in our bodies here in Spanish Fork, and it's a great thing to see. So we'll see you next Saturday. Lastly, no, I already talked about that. That's all I have, Mayor. I'm done.
You sure?
Yep, that's it. I didn't even take a drink.
You're not going to break his time, are you?
No, I don't.
Thank you.
Don't even want to try.
All right. Councilman Gordon.
I'll first invite Heather Yout up if she would like to come and give us the chamber going-ons.
So this last Saturday, we had our third annual Wolfsburg on Main. So we partnered with the city for that, and we just wanted to thank the mayor for coming out. He said he never gets a trophy, so here's your
Goodness.
Look at that. Holy cow. Thank you. I always give away the mayor trophy, and I said, gee, I never get a trophy. I always give it away.
Well, there's your trophy.
Thank you.
That's the time he's held one. You didn't know what that
And
felt
it's a
like,
good,
did you?
sturdy trophy, that trophy right there.
Thank you. You guys are awesome.
So our business of the month for June is Costco. So we'll be doing that this Thursday down at Costco, and they're actually doing pizza and cake for their celebration. We are continuing with our food trucks on Main throughout June. This coming Friday will actually be the first movies in the park combined with the food trucks. So we're partnering with the city on that for Mary Poppins. So come on down and you can watch that, and then have your kids build a kite down there at the park.
Old one or new one?
The new one. The new one. There's kites in the new one too. We have our farmers market information meeting just to find out any questions you may have as a vendor for the upcoming farmers market. It will be next week, the 11th at 7:30 here in the council chambers. So if you know anybody.
Yeah, it's on the calendar.
Yeah, okay. All right. Our new networking luncheon this month is on June 19th. We are still ironing out who our speaker will be. We're hoping that it's going to be an HR company coming to talk about HR issues that you may run into as a business. And we have a ribbon cutting on the 20th for Ryan Mortgage Company. It's actually in Payson, but we want to share the love. And then we've also been working with the 2020 Census Bureau. I know that Scott and I had a few meetings. We're trying to get everyone together so that they can kind of learn the value of filling out the 2020 census. Things like you don't need to be afraid. There's absolutely no way anyone can know what you put in there for 72 years. So, you know, it's really safe, and we just want to spread the word, and I don't think people realize how much money as a state and a community that we can get as funding. I think they told us almost $1,900 per person. Yeah, so spread the word. We want everyone to fill out the census this year, or next year. So anyway, that's all I have.
Cool.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Heather.
She is, she's wonderful. She's really goes above and beyond with our chamber, and we thank her for all that she does. It's why it's in a good spot right now. So again, thank you. We had a meeting with the Solid Waste District over in Springville. The majority of the meeting was spent talking about the land that has been surplused in Springville. It's somewhat overshadowing the idea that we're moving to the transfer station to Spanish Fork near the jail. And so we reversed all offers that we had received up to that point as Mayor, you knew, and the rest of the council. And so we're accepting all offers July 8th by 5 o'clock to see if there's a potential buyer that may want to buy all 40 acres versus little chunks like we had up to that point. So that was the lion's share of the meeting. But again, we did spend some time approving the budget and allocating new line items and funds for the new transfer station, as I've talked, and don't want to overshadow the victory that we have there to build that new facility, and the way things have come together. You just can't champion that, talk enough about being able to stabilize rates and the future of that. So also had my first water quality board meeting, and that went well up in Salt Lake. We had been on the Friday prior, a group of us up in Ogden, looking at the Ogden River for a river restoration project that we would like to do through the Spanish Fork corridor, and they talked about that meat packing plant where many years ago they used to just dump the blood into the river, the Ogden River, and so the Water Quality Board, it was on their radar, they were talking about it. So as we had seen in person, the guys in hazmat suits cleaning up that site, that it was kind of fun for me to be discussing that at this Water Quality Board meeting and real life that I had been there. So those things have been fun, Mayor, as I've continued to work with them, and that's all I have.
Great, thanks. Councilman Argo.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have anything at this time.
You get the ribbon. Thank you. That's great. Yeah, he does. No, he doesn't get the trophy. I said a ribbon. I earned this one. I worked hard for this. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Just one last thing I wanted to touch on is this last week we had the memorial service up at the cemetery. First of all, I wanted to let all our sexton and our staff that works up there at the cemetery, they make that cemetery look awesome. It's probably one of the nicest looking cemeteries in the state as far as I'm concerned. And when you put up all those crosses with the flags on it to recognize all our veterans that have passed on, it's a pretty humbling, I'll tell you. And it was fun to go through, thank you, and locate my dad and my grandfather, my uncles, they're represented there and on that wall. So I want them to know how much I appreciate them for what they've done to our cemetery, and it's awesome. So, all right, let's move along. Spanish Fork 101, we've got UTA Service Choice. Come on down, Dave.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. It's a pleasure tonight to welcome some folks from the Utah Transit Authority. Alex Beam will be presenting here. He's joined by Ken Anson with UTA and UTA trustee Kent Millington. And again, we welcome them. We're grateful to have them here. Let's take a quick minute here to introduce what I understand about the project that they're working on right now. It's not a project that's Spanish Fork, the entire service area for UTA, but I think it's extremely important for Spanish Fork. And the undertaking that UTA has commenced here, I think, is a challenging one. It has everything to do with, from my perspective, I would say, level of service and how they make decisions that impact where routes go, how frequently those routes are offered, and ultimately what service we enjoy here in Spanish Fork. And of course, we appreciate the service that UTA provides and the impact that they have on the community. I don't know if this is the case for any of you. I suspect from time to time you do get asked questions about bus routes and service and how things might change over time. And I say this with complete respect, understanding, again, it's a very challenging issue that faces UTA in terms of how do you balance the different priorities that come relative to operating a transit system. And it's extremely complicated and extremely complex. But of course, here in Spanish Fork, we've grown a lot, and we really haven't seen our service change a lot in recent years. And that's something that I know is is on the minds of some folks in the community. And I really believe that this project is the first step towards providing UTA with the information that they need to make decisions to provide the types of service or the type of service, again, I'd say level of service that would be most beneficial to Spanish Fork City. So that's my intro. Alex, I'll turn things over to you. I think that's all queued up and ready to go.
Yep.
And again, welcome. We appreciate you guys being here.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Mayor and Council, for the invite and opportunity to speak. I've got a good amount of information to cover, so what I'm going to do is probably go kind of quick.
Good.
But feel free to stop me at any point if you need clarification, have questions, and then, of course, at the end, any additional questions. So, as Dave kind of introduced, what we're doing is we're doing a community engagement service planning process, and we're asking the public to prioritize how bus service resources should be used so we can think about the trade-offs. Getting that feedback through a variety of methods, and that's going to inform changes to the bus service, and then what's going to come out of that is a bus network plan. And timeline, we're kind of between the first two right now, so throughout the spring we've been going out up and down the Wasatch Front, going to different events, council meetings, MPO meetings, every place that will have us come. We've gone to festivals. We're at the Tulip Festival. We're at a number of other festivals up and down, sharing information. We had open houses, and we're collecting that information now that we've received and taking that to the board, and that's going to inform a draft network plan. Then we're going to take that plan. So right now it's kind of high level, and we're going to take that and put some stuff on paper. Then we're going to take the proposed plan out, and we're going to have a whole outreach process, which is going to happen either late this year, early next year. We're going to take the input we get from that plan, revise it, and think about implementation, and then with the idea that we would have these proposed changes go into effect starting in fall of 2021. So the project's called Service Choices. What are the choices? So UTA, like transit agencies everywhere, gets asked to accomplish a number of different goals, and that includes managing congestion, reducing congestion, improving air quality by having less cars on the road, serving people in need or who don't have other ways to get around, getting out to every community, just to name a few. And sometimes when we focus on one of those things, it means we can do less of another. So, we operate on a fixed budget, so we have to determine what do we want to prioritize. So those goals can kind of funnel up into two major categories, which we generally call ridership, which means we want to design service that gets as many riders as possible, even if service is not available in as many places. And the flip side of that is coverage, which means being available in as many places as possible, even if not as many people ride. And I'm going to kind of describe this through a fictional town where you can imagine that the lines are streets throughout the town. The dots are concentrations of people, jobs, and activity centers like shopping centers, that sort of thing. You have 18 buses to operate, and you say, I want to focus totally on ridership. That's going to look like this. So you've got really frequent service that's really useful for most of the people who live near those two main streets because you're putting all your service there. You don't need to plan your day around looking at a bus schedule or when the bus comes. You can just go out and know that service is coming. However, if you're over here, you don't have bus service at all, right? So if we flip the far other side of that, you take those same 18 buses and you run them on. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, there you go. Great, thanks. There we go. So now, when you're over here, you've got service, but because we've taken those same buses and we're now running them on every single street, they're maybe going to come once an hour, once every 2 hours. Maybe they only operate during shift changes or rush hour. There's no service on the weekend. So less people are going to find that useful. Less people are going to use it because they need to make a lot more effort to use the service. So they're both important, but they kind of lead service in different directions. When we're thinking ridership, we're thinking, let's think like a business. Where's our market for transit? Where do we get the most bang for the buck? The other side says, you know, we're public service. Where can we get to the most people? You know, and like I say, there's not one right or wrong answer, but they do different things. So when we're planning for service, when someone comes to UTA or, you know, UTA has the goal of getting lots of riders, two big things we look at are the characteristics of the service, because, you know, how often it runs. It's sort of a good way to imagine that is if you had a gate at the end of your driveway and it only opened once an hour or twice a day, that limits where you can go. The same way with bus service or any other kind of transit service. If it's coming all the time, you can go all over every place you need to go all day, and you don't need to plan for when that gate's going to open. You know, where it runs, when it runs, does it run early in the morning, late at night? If you have, you know, a job at Costco or something where they say you have to work on Saturday, can you use the bus to get there on Saturday? The other part, another big piece of that is the lane use, which, you know, UTA has limited control over. That's more our communities. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about those things that we look for to drive ridership on the next slide here. So up in the upper left, we've got density. And essentially, when you've got more jobs and activities near every transit stop, it follows that you have more people using the service. And conversely, when you have less riders. Walkability, when you get on and off a transit vehicle, you have to get to and from your destination or your origin. Can you walk there, or is there a highway that doesn't have a safe crossing? If you are using bus service, at some point you got to get across the street if you're going both ways. So linearity, you know, an ideal world for transit, you have your office park, your big box store, your university, and your housing all going right up by the road in a straight line. But what we end up having to try to figure out is the office park that's at the end of a cul-de-sac with nothing else nearby, the big box store that's behind a half-mile of parking lot where they want us to come into the parking lot to go to the door, university that's at the end of the street and, you know, up at the top of a hill, and the housing that's in a cul-de-sac also. So, and then finally, proximity. When we want high ridership, you want a lot of things close together. We have, you know, this certainly along the Wasatch Front where we have high concentrations of things, and then a large distance where there isn't something, and then more concentration of things. That obviously increases our cost to run that kind of service because we're operating a transit vehicle that's not picking up or dropping off people. All right. So when we think about coverage, we do analysis also, but before we even get to that, we think about what we want to achieve. And the three big things that people come to transit agencies and ask when they say we want what we call coverage type service is helping people who have no transportation alternative. And that means looking at areas where there's low-income populations, people who don't have cars in their households, elderly populations, or people who are unable to drive. Responding to growth. If you say the priority is there's growth, that's going to look different. So you're going to then look at where the areas are along the edge of the region where there's new housing going in, where 10 years ago it was a farm field and now there's houses there. And maybe there won't be a lot of people riding it now, but do we want to give them some kind of service because there's people out there now? And then, another thing that we hear is, which is certainly a reasonable thing for people to ask, they say, we're in the taxing district, we are paying into it, we would like to get service, even though we know that we don't meet those ridership standards, so we know a lot of people won't ride it, but we'd like some service. So, we worked with our consultant team, and they sort of mapped out how service looks along the Wasatch Front, in our northern region, the central region where you see the thicker red lines. You've got more frequent service. As the lines are lighter, it comes less often. In the central region is the densest part of our region, so that's where we have the most high frequency service. And in the southern part, in Utah County, we have UVX, which obviously runs very frequently between Provo and Orem. We have the 850 line that runs along State Street, and a lot of the other service is somewhat limited. Some of that based on land use, some of that based on developing. Maybe in the future we see opportunities for additional service as density and some of the land use starts to fill in. But a lot of it's concentrated on those two services, and the rest of it is connections to front runner at job-specific times. So where is UTA's bus service today in terms of this ridership coverage split? And when I talked about it, I talked about going all the way one way or the other. Nobody generally does it one or the other. It's a spectrum. So Utah County and Salt Lake and Tooele, when we measured it, kind of fall 60% of the resources are currently devoted to those high ridership frequent service that runs in dense areas, about 40% to just having service to either connect to kind of a hard to reach job center or lower density areas. In our northern region, that being Davis, Box Elder, and Weber County, it's flipped. So, like I said, we've been doing substantial public engagement as part of this, and it's going to be ongoing, so we're not done, but we've gone through the first part in the spring where we had an online survey. We collected about 3,500 responses on our survey, and we had open house events in each of our regions. We had community leader half-day focused workshops. Dave, among others, attended, and really we dug deep into this trade-off that transit planning involves, and whether you want to go towards ridership or towards coverage. What I'm doing here today is what we're calling our Roadshow, which is where we're out with elected officials, staff, committee members, partner agencies, and kind of giving a more in-depth presentation and question and answer session. So the questions that we've been asking in the initial survey has been, do you think we have the right split now? So for Utah County, 60% of our resources say focus on ridership, 40% say coverage, or should that shift more towards one way or the other? And we asked this question for current funding and for additional money. And that's an important distinction, because if you say you want to shift the balance with our current money, you're saying take away something that exists now to focus more on something else. So if you're saying spread the service out to places where it isn't now, you're saying, reduce frequency on some other service. And conversely, if you're saying you need to get more riders per hour of service you put out there, then you're saying maybe some of the coverage type service runs less frequently, or maybe some of the lines go away. We're not to the point where we've made any kind of proposals for that yet, but that's what would happen. If it's new money, then obviously we could keep everything as it is, and then we would say when we have new funds, the balance should be whatever people select that it should be. And then the second part, as I mentioned, when we talk about coverage service, we want to know what people think is the priority for that, whether that be people who don't have other options, everyone who pays taxes gets some kind of service, or serve newly developing areas at the edge of the region. And then finally, we've got a project website. Like I said, we're going to be out in the community as we go through this process. Once we develop a proposal, that's going to have its own engagement process as part of this. And with that, I will open to any questions if anyone has.
Anybody got any questions?
Thank you. Here's our website.
If not, you can go here or you can call Kent, because Kent knows everything there ever needs to know about it. Don't you, my good friend?
Well, you're kind, Mayor.
We've been in a lot of meetings together, Kent and I, so thank you. I appreciate that's very informative for us,
Yes,
Informative.
and we'll see if we can increase the ridership.
Okay, sounds good.
Get
Yep.
you some more money.
All right. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. All right, let's go to Old Airport Master Plan. Here comes the Flyboys.
Mayor, I'd like to introduce Jared Esselman, the director of the Utah Division of Aeronautics. He just plays you just can't believe how critical a role he plays in the things we're able to accomplish down there at the airport and our funding. And but anyway, he's found something really neat to share with us as a city. I'll turn the time over to Jared.
Thank you, Chris. So I'm the director of aeronautics. I manage the state aviation system. And we were doing some construction in our aeronautics building and literally cleaning out our attic. And I wanted to bring this to y'all. It is the 1948 master plan for the Spanish Fork Airport.
Oh, that's awesome.
It is signed, this document predates the Federal Aviation Administration. It is signed by the Civil Aeronautics Administration. The district airport engineer's name was Beam. The Spanish Fork mayor at the time was Gardner, and the Springville city mayor was Price, and this was back when we had a Utah State Aeronautics Commission. I think this is the first master plan for the Spanish Fork Airport ever. So we found this on our attic. It's a lot like finding the treasure map to One-Eyed Willie, but I will give this to you, Mr. Mayor.
Another trophy?
Boy, this is it's a banner day.
What is going on?
Look at
Don't
that.
mess it up. This is like,
You don't want me to drop it?
oh, I'm so stressed right now.
Put the crayons
That
away.
is awesome.
And I don't know who did it, but the 1960 master plan is stapled to the back of it. And I think that's why we have the 1948 plan, because we found them with a bunch of 1960, 1970 era master plans. But that was a true gem that we found hidden away in the attic.
Hey, we'll find a good spot for this. Scott will probably take some pictures of it and post it so those that are not challenged like I am can watch it or pull it up on their computer. So we appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you for bringing it to us.
And as straight as those lines are, that entire document is handwritten.
That's what I was just going to point out.
Yeah.
The entire document is handwritten.
That's how Mayor grew up in the building industry.
Yeah, it was all just like
Reading
that.
plans just like that.
And
Before
that's why I
CAD
took,
systems.
that's why I took my draft class, and I'm drawing. And It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thank
We
you. Appreciate it.
that.
Glad to do it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. That's good.
Careful. This is like the movie National Treasure. Get him some lemons and a hair dryer. Please. Oh.
All right. Awesome. That's good. Thank you. Thank you
very
so
much.
much, Jared.
Do you want me to ask Chris what he's?
That's really cool.
What? Chris Childs. What are you gonna do with it?
Well, I would, there's a good chance, we're planning a new FBO down there. And I think to frame it big on the wall of, where people will see it, I think would be kind of a neat thing, because we're one of the oldest continuously operating airports in the state. Most of the airports that were founded about this same time are no longer around, but Spanish Fork Airport has been, plugging away for an awfully long time. Yeah, and so this is kind of exciting. There's some old. The interesting thing is, we have our old crosswind runway, but we also have another old runway that the only remnants of it are some real old end markers that are out there in the field over by the kind of by the jail, but a little bit further west than on the airport property there. And if you look out there, you can still see these old batter boards that are still standing, and there's nothing left of the runway even out there. And I'm anxious to review these plans, and they probably show that as the main runway.
Cool.
That there's you can't even tell that that's where it was at this.
Probably take it to your next board meeting.
Yeah.
And I'm sure those.
Yeah,
guys
it'll be fun. It'll be fun to share it with.
Yeah,
So I was just so excited to have Jared come all the way down from Salt Lake and make that presentation. And
we do appreciate that.
And Jared is doing some amazing things up at the state right now. We've got an economic survey. It's hard to understand the economic benefit that an airport brings to a community, and we've got one of the most in-depth economic studies that's ever been done that Jared is spearheading up there, that's going to give us a ton of really valuable information as far as the value the airport brings to the community. So,
my first ride in an airplane was when I was a Cub Scout down at Spanish Fork Airport. My uncle Mark Nelson took us up in his plane, our whole Cub Scout group. It was awesome. So I can still remember it. And I still went in that same building. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank
Thanks
you.
again.
All right. Consent items.
Motion to approve the consent items.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Mendenhall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. FY 2020 Enterprise Fund Transfer. Kent, I have a feeling we're going to see you a lot tonight.
I have 3 public hearings to do tonight.
Guys, let's see if we can make a record.
Is all 3 of them?
For the most part. We will go fast. Some of it we've talked before. Tonight is the public hearing to hit public input. You'll have to hurry down to get the public input. The first public hearing that you're going to have is, once I get done with this part, then you go into public hearing, take public hearing, close it out, and then open another public hearing as we go through that process. This one is called the Enterprise Funds Transfer Public Hearing, and in 2017, the state legislature passed a new law that says for cities that transfer funds from enterprise funds to a general fund to support the general fund, you need to have a public hearing just for that. Tonight is that public hearing because we do transfer money from our enterprise funds, our utilities, to the general fund in the form of a dividend. The council decides how much is that dividend. This year's dividend is the same as last year, which is a 3.5% of the revenue of the enterprise funds. So tonight, we're having the public hearing. These are the places I had to notice to let the public know of the public hearing, and to give them an opportunity to come and to voice their opinion about us transferring monies from the enterprise fund. Part of the state law requires us to do it in a certain specific data has to be given. So they call it by state statute, it's called enterprise fund accounting data. And in that, there are 2 different types. And I'm going to briefly tell you the 2 different types. There's a 1 and a 2. 1 is we call it indirect services, meaning we bill the enterprise funds for costs that are real costs in the general fund. For example, legal. The legal exists to do the service of the whole city, and so part of the legal's department's budget in the general fund is assessed out to the enterprise funds. That's what we call through indirect services. Those examples are in number 1. The number 2 item is called ones that aren't measured in a real cost or real related cost. Those are gifts. And so transfers come from the enterprise funds to the general fund as enterprise funds, and they come as gift or a straight transfer, meaning they don't have to be paid back or they can't be measured. And those are called, we're calling those the dividend transfers. And inside those dividend transfers, we have to advertise what's the dollar amount, who's contributing to the general fund, and what percent of that of the expenses does that measure. For example, how much dollar is from electric going to the general fund, and what percent is that dollar of the total budget of the electric. Okay, so this is a letter that we have to give. Again, this is talking about number 2 data. This is a letter that was sent, and this is the gift, the dividend gift to the general fund. We view it as the staff and as the council views it as being the city is the owner of the utility. The taxpayers and utility customers are the owners of this utility, and they are receiving or giving a dividend from the utilities to the general fund to provide services and the quality of life in the general fund. So this spells out what dollar amount it was and what percent of the expenditure. So by statute, we have to have that information in this document or a letter. And so this was sent to all the residents in their utility bill this past month. So they received this, and the residents have that, or your customers, utility customers have that. There's also a contribution from a gift from the electric fund to the debt service fund to help pay for the Justice Center, the court, and the police station down there. Okay? Again, this is a little bit close-up picture of that if you wanted to see what those amounts are and what they total to. Okay? Again, there's 2 types of data, the number 1 and the number 2. This hearing talks about displaying or sharing that information. This is a little bit more information about the number 1, Indirect Services. As I was talking about, say, in legal, their total budget is $500,000. 45% stays in general, and then that percent then is allocated out. An assessment from all of those goes back to the general fund to help pay for the legal and that. And so these are the departments that assess some of their expenses out to the enterprise funds to pay them back for their services they provide in the general fund. This year's total indirect services, as you total all those up, is $4 million that comes out of the enterprise funds into the general fund. As far as the number 2, the contribution that comes there.
You know the rule. Thank you. Love it.
The gift dividend was $1.6 million as far as the part that's transferred. So that does seem like a lot of money coming out of the enterprise funds to them, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the city budget to see where those funds are used and how the city uses those funds. Here's a summary of all the transfers as far as what's going. I've color coded these, and so these are the dividends, and this is them landing into the general fund. And there's other transfers that go on, but they're not required by the statute to talk about those because they're general fund ones transferring into capital projects. For example, we're transferring $1.4 million to the fire station, to the parks to finish a park in Legacy is $1 million. So we're transferring other transfers that are coming out of the general fund to do major projects and capital projects. And that's the end of my comment for the first public hearing. So now you can open the public hearing for enterprise fund transfer public hearing and take input, and then close that, and then we'll go to the public hearing too.
All right, I'd entertain a motion for a public hearing for enterprise fund transfers.
I move we go into public hearing for the enterprise fund transfer.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Scobes, a second by Councilmember Beck. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now we're in public hearing. Anyone who would like to come up and talk about this, feel free to come on up. Seeing none.
I move we go out of public hearing.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Argal. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're now out. None.
Don't need a motion or anything of that. That's just, we fulfilled the requirement on that one.
Thank you.
So we're going to the second one. Once I get done with this presentation, you open up. This is for the budget, the city budget. A month ago, we had the tentative budget was presented. We've had a month for the public. It's been available online for anybody that wanted to look at it. In that meantime, Seth has some good interns that have created a nice colorful brochure. It's the same budget numbers in there, but they've added some nice pictures and some dialogue and a couple graphs. So it's the same budget, just kind of presented in a different way. This budget is right now available online with the new narrative organized maybe just a little bit different, but it is the same budget that you received the first meeting in May. So tonight is the chance for the public to give some input. It's a lot of numbers. I got this picture because that's what the budget looked like, but Seth and I and the department heads were able to take all those numbers and put them into an organized fashion. Okay, so the timeline is we met on the 7th, and we scheduled this public hearing, which is today. You adopted the tentative budget in that May 7th meeting. Tonight we're holding the public hearing for input. It can be modified in the next 2 weeks, which it could be adopted in the second meeting in June, which is June 18th. As we walk through this today, we're going to talk about a truth and taxation hearing. If the council at this point is planning on doing a truth and taxation hearing, that hearing will take place on August 6th. And at that time, we will adopt the final property tax resolution that would be used for the 2019 property taxes, which will be that our residents will pay sometime in November. And we'll continue on with that. So this year's budget, there we go. It actually is a decrease from last year's ending budget. Some projects were done in last year's. We're waiting to see if they're going to be, what ones get finished and rolled over. But it actually is a decrease of $4 million, almost $5 million compared to last year's, the budget we're in right now. What's in the budget document, you'll be able to view that. I won't go through each one of those. The total budget for 2020 is $105 million, divided up into those three different pie charts. We've seen this before. Enterprise funds are the big one. General funds, $30 million. And the miscellaneous funds are $12 million, for a total of $105. I'm going to go kind of fast through this part since we've already did this a month ago. Just for the residents at home that maybe didn't see that. This is the expenses of the general fund. You can see how many, there's a lot of departments in the general fund, from senior citizens to legal, engineering, airport, police, fire, ambulance, parks, justice center, cemetery, library, fairgrounds, swimming pool, golf course. All these are all in the general fund. And to provide all those services, it costs about $30 million to do that. So as I'm going to buzz through each one of the pieces of the pie. Here's the enterprise funds. So it's $61 million, almost $62 million, to provide those utilities for each one. Those are the expenses. And the miscellaneous ones are debt service, capital projects, special revenue, and you can see the new one here that's coming in this year is the RAP tax revenue line that wasn't here last year, and it's here for this year. So we're going to talk about that this next year, let you know that the budget that we budgeted, somewhere around $500,000 for that program. Okay. This is an example of services in the general fund who do collect some revenue, but you can see those services, some of them don't provide enough revenue on their own, so they need to be subsidized. And you can see some of them are larger, some of them, for example, the fairgrounds doesn't normally have $1.5 million subsidy, but this year we budgeted to maybe buy some property down there, so there's sometimes some one-time expenditures that might be in those. So you can see that there is a shortfall of about $10 million in this year's budget. So those transfers and dividends help make ends meet, providing all those services in the general fund. Here's a list of all of the expenses. And inside the revenue side of the general fund, you can see there are some taxes. There's property tax, sales tax, energy tax, some franchise taxes, charges for services. Here's the transfer, the dividend that comes in to help, and here's the indirect services that we talked about. Those two big items that these are the big ones that contribute to the general fund. Here's the graph on the sales tax. We are in a booming economy as far as our sales tax. You can see what happens when the recession happens. You hope those don't happen again, but they do. Sales tax does have an impact. Property taxes remain pretty flat. It's an increase. It's pretty resistant to recessions, but it is not climbing at the growth potential as what the sales tax is. We're going to talk a little bit about property tax. Property tax for the city, we are a small piece of the pie. When a resident pays their property tax, and of course the school district is the large piece of the pie, we're only 8% of that pie. Other cities have a higher property tax rate than us, and you can see that our property tax rate is the second to the lowest. We were the lowest for many, many, many years. I guess Eagle Mountain wanted to compete. We are thinking of what things that the city can do to maintain the quality of life and to do projects, some important projects that the city has, and how we're going to fund those. So as you can see, the next rate above us, so our city rate, just our 8% rate right here of the total rate is, I'm going to call it in mils, so I'm going to say 9.5. So we use that common terminology. At 9.5, the next one above us is 12. And so these are numbers I'm going to come back to give you a reference point. So we're at the bottom. The last year, the council did a truth and taxation hearing and held that rate and allowed inflation to capture through that rate the growth in the values of everybody's homes that's inside the city. And so we captured a growth, extra revenue to the city through maintaining the rate. The city does have a plan, and we're going to walk through a little bit of that plan right now and an explanation of why we're going to do a truth and taxation hearing. What is the plans for that money? What are the projects in order to educate the citizens that pay the tax what that tax dollar is going to be used for, okay? So there's two terms I want to go over. One is hold the rate, one is raise the rate. Okay, last year we held the rate. We held the rate, and it earned, or it gathered or collected about $150,000 in property tax, which we put into a capital projects fund for a fire station. So one of the first items to adjust the property tax rate would be to hold the rate at that 955 right here. For the 955 to hold it. This is last year's slide, and it shows that we held it, and that because we held it, we collected about $150,000 because we held that rate. We did hold it again back in 2013, and it collected $21,000 is all. So by holding the rate, if we didn't hold the rate last year, it would have fell to 8, and 8.8 is the number, but we held it at 9.5, and it was a growth in the property tax rate of 0.6. Okay? The impact of last year's was about $10 for your annual property tax. Okay. The next thing is to talk a little bit about, I don't know if Seth, you want to talk about this? Andy, or you want me to just do it? I can, if you want. This is Seth's slide. What this is, I'll let him decide if he wants to go up.
Obviously, no.
Okay.
I mean, do you guys need an arm wrestle? to see
Yeah,
who-
let's get the mic. It is estimated that the cost of the new library, the portion that will be covered through property tax, would be $7.5 million. And to do that would require a property tax increase if we did it this year. In order to do the debt service payment of that would require an impact on an average home, the average home price being $260,000, to raise that home property tax by $36. Okay? So the plan is that we won't have a dramatic increase in property tax. So just like the fire station, we're going to hold the rate for the next 3 years so we can gather $150 for each one of those years if the appraised value goes up continually. And so that money is going to be used for the fire station. It is being proposed that we're going to raise the rate for the library. So the other one's for the fire station, this one's for the library, at $1 per month per home on the average home. Okay? And so by doing that, let me walk to this next slide. A lot of numbers, but I've kind of pulled out the ones that are important. So to hold the rate for the public safety, which is the fire station, is going to be an impact of about 81 cents per month. Okay? To raise the rate, that $1 for the monthly impact for the library for that $1 would be an increase of $12 for the whole year, and that rate increase would be, I'm trying to find it right here, for the library. So kind of boiling all those numbers down, by holding the rate and raising the rate $1 per month on an average home for the next 3 years would generate $12 from that home for this year, $12 next year, and $12 more the next year. So it would be a phase-in plan over the next 3 years to get us up to that $36 on the whole year. So what that means is in 3 years from now, we would have a revenue stream that we've gradually built up for not only for the fire station, but also for the library after 3 years. So there's 2 more for the fire station on a 3-year plan, 3 for the library for a 3-year plan. So 3 years from now, we would have that revenue stream, which would be $36 as a revenue stream to go for it. So what does that mean to our rate? So here's the new gross rate. So after this year, it would maintain at the 955, grow a little bit for the library, and it would be at 10. The next year, maintain the same rate at 955, grow it another $1, and that rate turns it to 11. Now the third year, we're done with the fire station, so we're not going to need to hold the rate for the 4th year for the fire station, and we're going to maintain the growth, and so it actually goes back down for that gross rate for the 3rd year. So in summary, with property tax, the plan is to hold the rate for 1 more year. So this is our 2nd year of a 3-year plan. For the property tax for the library, this is the 1st year of that 3-year plan, is to raise $1 per month increase on an average home. Okay, and the average home is a $265,000. That's what it was last year. That's the number. We haven't got that number yet for the county. They're still yet to reveal that to us. Okay, so what that means is after the 3 years, our certified tax rate will still be below the next one here. What these other cities do with their taxes in the next 3 years, I don't know. If they let them fall, if they maintain it, I don't know where that goes. But the way we stand right now, we'd be back to around 11, 10, but it'd still be below the 12 of what the next city near us is at. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so in order to do a truth and taxation hearing, we have to advertise that. The advertising will go out in July, and the meeting will be scheduled the 6th of August, which is a regular council meeting, and it'll be a separate public hearing on that night, kind of like we had this one with the transfers, all the same night. We have different public hearings. It'll be the same way. So we'll have a meeting that night, and we'll have a public hearing for the Truth and Taxation hearing as a separate meeting. So we'll close council meeting and we go into a separate whole meeting for it. That's legislature has created that requirement. Until that time, we'll be operating on a tentative budget, and then in August, once you adopt the new property tax rate, then we'll adopt the budget with those numbers. We've put those numbers in there right now, so those are the numbers we're anticipating. If that keeps going, or we can change those. But right now, the numbers that you have in the document you have, it plans for holding the rate and increasing the rate $1 per month on an average home. Okay? All right, I'm going to briefly go through, we didn't go over this, but I'm going to quickly go through each one of these. But these are the rate changes. There's not very much in water. So I'm going to go on to the next one. So sewer, there are some sewer adjustments in the rate. There is a major sewer projects planned into the future. So we are planning gradually adjusting our rates so we can build a nice new sewer plant at some point down the road, and that target date is a couple years in advance from now. But this is one adjustment in that planned big project coming up down the road. So this is it's a $2 raise in your sewer rate. So here's the electric rates. What's happening in the electric rates is we're adjusting the retail rate up, but we're also adjusting the PCA rate down. So this adjustment is a net neutral. So part of your electric rate at your home, there's a retail rate, and then we add on top of that the adjustments that cost us to buy power month, and it changes from month to month. We call it the PCA adjustment on top of that. And we're adjusting that PCA adjustment smaller. At the same time, we're going to raise the retail rate, but the net rate in the end is not raising the electric rate. So it's just an adjustment, taking it from one rate and moving it to the other rate. This is the garbage. Garbage is going from $11.66 to $12.39. Recycle is going $4.57 to $5.06. Storm drain staying the same. Pressurized irrigation have an adjustment from 82 to 97. Cemetery, there's a couple of adjustments on how they charge after hours. You'll see down this area here is some new billing, and we're doing away with this type of billing and going to bill after hours a different way. Oh, that looks nice.
You'll have to skip it.
Okay. Those are impact fees you already had before. Some of them are changing. I know, I put that numbers up there. Here's the transfers that we talked about a few minutes ago in that other hearing. Just letting you know that we are using that money into the general fund. Here's a list of the donations that we have and fee waivers. Any others you would like to add? Now's the time you can add. If you want to take any of them off, we'll take them off. Otherwise, they'll be good till the next public hearing. You want to change it. Okay. Again, this is the end. The budget is 105. We're not going to adopt it tonight. This is an opportunity for now the public is even more educated. Again, the document is on the city's website under finance, under the budgets, under tentative budget 2020. And that is the budget. And now it's open for you to, now it's time for you to open the public hearing.
Thank you. All right, I'd entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Mendenhall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone from the audience that'd like to come up and talk about the budget? Since Kent did such a wonderful job. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
Go out of public hearing.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilman Scobes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's all we need to do on that, right? Okay. New business, resolution 19-12, authorizing the city engineer to execute UDOT betterment and management agreements.
Maintenance. So we authorize some of our departments to execute agreements rather than have to bring everything to the city council. Those are in the form of standardized agreements. For instance, we have contracts at the fairgrounds when we rent the stalls out, and they're a set amount. You've pre-approved those, you've seen the form, and we've authorized somebody who works at the fairgrounds to execute those, so that all the trivial things don't have to come to council. It makes our city run more efficiently, but allows you to control the budget that we've just been through and to be on top of things. From time to time, we discover other things that it makes sense to bring to you to do that, and that's what this is. So occasionally, UDOT does projects within our city, and when they do that, sometimes it makes sense that they do a side project with their project that benefits us. And they enter what they call a betterment contract. It's a standard form. You have it attached to the back of your document. And they put that in, we pay for it. So it makes some sense on the smaller betterment agreements for our city that we authorize the Public Works Director to execute those agreements. So you'll see the condition there is it's a budgeted project and the amount is less than $25,000. Now, we had a betterment project earlier in this fiscal year that was a couple $100,000. You should look at something like that. So we select $25,000 because that kind of matches what we do in our finance code with bids. Second thing is a maintenance agreement. From time to time, UDOT needs our assistance with some of their projects. Usually it's so their stormwater can run off and it'll go into one of our detention basins or go into our stormwater system is usually what that is. And they'll pay us usually a really small sum to handle that. So it makes sense for those type of things that contract be executed by the Public Works Director. So that's what this is about. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments? See none, I'd entertain a motion.
I move that we approve Resolution 19-12, authorizing the city engineer to execute UDOT betterment and maintenance agreements.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilmember Beck, a second by Councilman Scobes. This is a roll call vote. Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
Councilman Argal.
Aye.
That passes. RAP Program Committee recommendations.
Mayor and Council, so thank you for giving us a minute. I'm representing the RAP Program Committee, and Mike alluded to earlier that the committee met last night for several hours, I might add. And yes, we enjoyed a piece of pizza.
Thanks for inviting.
We had several replications.
Wow, he was just waiting for that, wasn't he?
That's Seth. That's Seth. He came up with it, and I told him I'd use it. So, it's very appropriate, I think. We had several that were submitted, and about close to $100,000 worth. The committee is recommending that we fund about $76,000 of those. You have the information there. What we would like to do is have you review that information, give any feedback, ask any questions, give you a couple weeks to make that decision as to whether you want to fund the ones that we've submitted. At that time, then we will make the funds available July 1st for these organizations. Excellent committee, great citizens in our community, a wide variety of citizens, which made for a great meeting. They are very intelligent. They're taking the responsibility that you've given them very seriously. And I enjoyed it thoroughly, meeting with them, because they're very insightful. and looking out for the needs of the community. So I appreciate the opportunity to work with them. So if you have any questions, please feel free to send them my way. We can disperse them amongst the committee or get you in touch with people who are familiar with all of the varying organizations who submitted applications, and we'll help you through the process. So thank you. Any questions for me initially?
Is that a wrap?
You just took it right away.
There it is.
There's no questions then.
Nice job.
That's a wrap.
Thank you, Dell. All right.
I move we adjourn to the redevelopment agency.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Mendenhall. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are now in RDA.
Motion to approve the consent items.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Argal. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're still in RDA. Can't.
You ready? One more.
There you go.
Okay, we have the RDA budget. And you've seen this just last council meeting. And I'm just going to show you two maps to let the public know. We have the North Industrial RDA has now completed its life. It has money in it, and that's what can be budgeted out. Kirby Lane ends next year at the end of its 25 years. And Corona deals with sales tax, so it's not property tax. The windmills ended this year, so it's completed. And Sierra Bonita is the Young Living one, and it has about 8 more years on it. So this budget is this column right here. So the budget you'll approve on the next council meeting would be this budget right here of $1.5 million, making up of the expenditures of all those funds that are across there. Okay, so RDAs are areas that the property tax from all taxing entities can be captured on an increment, so it has a base level of when you create it, and anything that's built or improvement after that point, the property taxes that we're going at the beginning of the creation will continue to flow in through to the school district and to the county and the taxing entities. But once you create an RDA or a CDA or an area, then you have a base, and anything built on top of that, the property tax that it generates is captured by the RDA and put back into that area as far as incentives, improvements, utilities, things to enhance that area to make it more viable and useful. Some of the areas are right around the downtown interchange. North Industrial, Kirby Lane is out by Hydro, and out in the commercial area is the Corona one. Again, this is the last slide, so this is the budget. If any public would like to comment after you open the public hearing for the RDA of the 5 areas, which is now soon to be, well, there's still money in some of them, so they'll still be open, but it won't be collecting any of that increment in some of those areas.
All right, I'd entertain a motion to go into RDA. Closed hearing for the budget. Open.
Motion,
Public.
motion to go into
Open.
public hearing for RDA.
Open range.
Second.
Let's start over.
I would entertain a motion to go into public hearing for the RDA budget 2020.
I move we go into public hearing for the RDA budget.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilman Scobes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
After all that, anyone that'd like to come up and talk to us about this budget? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to go out of close.
I move we close the public hearing of the RDA.
Got a motion by Councilmember Scobes, a second by Councilmember Beck. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The only item for the public to know is inside this document, that RDA budget is on page 81. So that it's part of the city, but it's kind of separate from the city, but it's on page 81 of the city budget.
Is there a time limit for the monies that are still in an RDA facility that they move over to a different fund or anything, or do you just keep it?
Just keep it for the most part. If it's indefinite, probably the taxing entities will start to say, funnel that, filter that back through to us. We have done that in the past. For example, when we closed an area, the Finger Hut building that was up there, that area was confined just to that property. And once it was done, there was some money left over in that, and we took and we divided that money back up and pushed it the rest of the way out to the school district and stuff. So in the end, that is a possibility to do that, but we're going to try to see if we can find ways to use it in those areas.
All right, I'd entertain a motion to reconvene into city council meeting.
I move we reconvene into city council meeting.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilman Argal. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I move we go into closed session for reasonably imminent litigation and land transaction.
Second?
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilmember Beck. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
I know. That's what we'll just have to. Hey, Heather.
Never seen you run so fast.